I'm sitting down at the bar at Legends Ranch, and there's a lady next to me, and she asked me how I was doing and what's going on. And so I kind of filled her in on my life and how upset and angry I seem to be all the time and how unfulfilled and just not happy. And she said, I'll never forget this. This was just the pivotal moment. And she looked at me and she said, I don't think you remember, but last year, same time, same seat, you told me this exact same thing. And she goes, and so what that's telling me is you haven't made a move. You haven't grown. You haven't done anything in the last year. You're
and
here.
you've known.
And you've known. You knew last year. You knew the year before. And here you are again telling me this story. And she was like, I just encourage you to make a move. Mm-hmm. And also, come next year at this time, I don't want to hear the same story.
You're like, send me a bill for that therapy session.
Literally. I was like, okay, a random lady that just like changed my life forever. And so what I do, I was like, thank you, ma'am. I got up and I went to you. I'm like, done. I'm done. I have to get rid of it. We're driving home and I'm like, I cannot. I just got called out. I'm on fire right now. I'm like, let's go. I have to get rid of it. I'm sending an email tomorrow. It's Saturday. Don't care. Sending it. And I did.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of KarWell Chronicles. Today, I have the honor of interviewing my husband. He's been on the podcast before. I think this is probably the third time you've been on the podcast. And honestly, I think the first time you were ever on the podcast, we talked about the topic we're going to talk about today, and you were getting ready to sell your insurance business, and then it got postponed for another year and a half, I think. So we're full circle back to that. Before we start out, I just wanted to say that I think it's been an honor watching you build this and exit this. I just know that, you know, both of us are entrepreneurs and both of us carry a lot of stress, and it's a lot of fun watching you perform.
Thank you.
So with that being said, I want to kind of dive into the last 6 months of our lives because it's been a wild 6 months.
That it has.
It's been 6 months full of transition. And it's been, I mean, this is not the first time we've gone through this transition of kind of flip-flopping roles and switching who's carrying what load.
Chances are it won't be the last.
Chances are it won't be the last, but every single time it feels a little bit scarier because the stakes are higher. There's more to lose. We're more invested. We're more emotionally tied. And so I'm excited to just kind of dive into what it looked like in deciding to transition out of insurance and into something different, and then what the last 6 months has looked like for us. So for the listeners who haven't listened to the first episode and maybe aren't familiar with your career because they are very involved in mine, why did you originally decide to get into insurance? Give them a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, well, truthfully, I don't remember the podcast you're referring to either. So
we were in Muskegon. Do you remember sitting at the island in our Muskegon apartment?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's, yeah. Okay, I do remember, yeah. Okay, all right, so I'm going to rewind about 10 years because it's been just shy of 10 years since I've hopped into that industry. And I'll try and make this quick and
relevant.
Yeah, as relevant and not boring as possible. Because everybody knows insurance is boring and most people don't understand it. It's a second language. And so people just tend to ignore it or get frustrated by it. I got into the insurance business after I was out of the oil field and had moved to Dallas-Fort Worth and ran into a buddy of a buddy who was in the insurance business. And I had, as you know, I'd kind of hopped around, did another job, hated it, was serving tables at that time. And it was really humbling going from making all the money that I made in the oil field to serving tables. I used to joke with my guests at the table that I went from making $100K to making guacamole. So that was humbling. And got into the insurance business back in 2015, and really the only reason I did it was because I was told that there was flexibility in both time and eventually in finances. Nobody mentioned how long that would take, but
They never do.
They never do, right? And so I got into the business, and really just to kind of break insurance down for a second and why it's so attractive. I'm sure nobody grows up to say, I want to be an insurance agent, but what it can provide you is the attractive part. So I was interviewing for the job in Dallas, in this high rise, everybody's dressed up, just back to where I wanted to be at that time, not serving.
Or closer to where you wanted
At
to
least
be.
closer, or what I thought I wanted at that time. And I remember the gentleman that was interviewing me, he had this book, and he told me that most people get into the insurance business for renewals or residual income. And that was before everybody was talking about residual income online, and it wasn't a thing back then, or at least I didn't know anything about
Our
it.
algorithms were not on building wealth.
Yeah, I'm sure it was being talked about, but I never heard about it. And so he flipped the book around and said, if you sell this many policies within a year, you can expect to make this much money next year as long as they don't pass away and you keep them on the books. And so the idea is people typically get in, bust it out for 5 years, and then coast. And I was like, oh, I like that. And I've since then I've made a joke that I sold insurance because I'm lazy, meaning I'm getting to a large book of business as fast as possible so I can coast.
Yeah.
And so that was very attractive at that time because you and me were dating, you were traveling all over the world, now taking me. So I needed something that would allow that, but also allow us to have a little bit of money as well. So fast forward, that organization, I'm very thankful for everything that they taught me, but fast forward, I ended up going out on my own with my boss at the time and also the guy that got me into the business. And then even fast forward from there, we made it about 2 or 3 years together. And fast forward from there, I then went out on my own.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break from the episode to shout out one of our sponsors, Minoan. Are you running a short-term rental? You know how important it is to create a space that's both stunning and functional. That's why we love Minoan. Minoan makes it easy to furnish and restock your rental with high-quality, stylish pieces from premium brands at up to 60% off. Plus, their centralized ordering lets you check out across multiple brands in one seamless cart. No stress, no hassle. Excuse me, only having one place to look for my receipts when my bookkeeper inevitably asks for them? Thank you, Minoan. Then, turn guest praise into profit with the digital showroom where you can showcase your design expertise and allow your guests to shop their stay. And the best part, Minoan is free to use, so you can elevate your space without breaking the bank. We use Minoan ourselves, and trust us, it's a game changer. All right, let's get back to the episode.
And I think one thing, that was our first exposure to any sort of residual income. That was mind-blowing to us, right? Like the only thing that we were familiar with at that time was trading our time for money, collecting a paycheck every 2 weeks. And so the thought process that you could develop a relationship with a client, get paid up front once, and then every single month after that, continue to get paid on that client. That was like it was
Right.
like that was our ticket to freedom. We were like, oh my gosh, how is nobody talking about this? Like it just blew our minds at that point in time. But I do want to mention as well, I think that, a big reason why you got into insurance that you didn't hit on earlier is, coming from the oil field, you were excellent at sales. I remember the first day I met you, like you and all your friends were in sales. And I was like, these are the definition of salesmen. Like I would want to do business with these people, right? Like they're friendly, they're talkative, they're personable, they're hungry. And so in transitioning from oil field to something else, I think it all made all the sense in the world for you to be in sales. It's just that this sales came with income that continued to pay out after your initial sale,
Right.
Which was super attractive. And it worked for a really long time. I've been very vocal online for the last 5 years that we live on your income and we invest 100% of mine. And that has been true. It's because you did sprint for the first couple of years and just getting as many clients as you possibly could. And we lived on that residual income, or we have lived on that residual income for a decade.
Yeah, and truthfully, I haven't mentioned this to many, many people, but on our honeymoon in 2019, I had made the decision because I'd been in it at that time for 4.5 years, and I felt like I'd never got what that guy showed me. I never had that. And
And you had been doing it at that point for 4 years,
Yeah,
maybe?
4.5 years, and the numbers just weren't adding up. And so I said that on that trip, I said, I am done with insurance unless something changes. And because I was selling life insurance, which was a larger upfront commission, but a smaller renewal. And on that trip, you were asleep, and I got a phone call from an agent that I worked with at that first organization. And he was like, we have done it wrong. We need to sell Medicare and not life insurance. And I was like, dude, I don't have any interest in all that. There's no money.
Yeah, you're selling a free product.
Yeah. Most plans are free, and it just...
It's a couple $100 versus several thousand of a payout on your first.
Yeah, and he's like, no, but the renewals are extremely high versus life insurance. And so I made a deal with him, and I'm sure not many insurance agents are going to listen to this, but I made a deal with him. If he took my AHIP the very first year, if he did the test that it requires to sell that product, then I will do it. I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
And so that was the first AEP in October I went to. I did like 40 plans, but then 2020, when the world was, going crazy, that was the year that Ethan went crazy. And
because everybody was home.
Everybody was home.
And Texans wanted you to come over.
Yeah, Texas was a little bit different during that time versus other states. And so there wasn't much pushback on me going to somebody's home at that point. And if there were any pushback, I would just, hey, let's meet in the yard or whatever.
Everybody's like, please come over.
Yeah. Like, we need some normal around here.
Yeah.
And so in 2020, that's when I really grew my book of business, and I went from basically 40 clients to over 600.
Which, thank God, because that's the year that I had decided to invest the 20 grand into the B&Bs. Mm-hmm. They got robbed. Mm-hmm. We were responsible for 5 apartments rents. We were barely making any money on any of the rents. Like, you were having your best year, and I was just eating my shit sandwich.
It's always worked out like that.
It really has.
It's just so weird.
Yeah. But yeah. Okay. So, we have flirted with, you built this insurance business, you built it out of necessity, mm-hmm. right? At that point in time, you were saying, I had made it very clear to you that I wasn't living in the oil patch. You were very certain that you didn't want to develop a career in the oil patch. If you know anything about me, I think Midland is the Permian Basin is the literal armpit of the U.S. Like, the first time I met Ethan, I flew in. He was living there at the time, and I flew in and I got off the plane and I was like, if you want to live here, I'm going to get on a plane and go home. Like, there is no chance that I'm staying here. And so when you moved to DFW and you started insurance, it really was out of necessity. It was like, I have this skill set of sales. I have this desire to be financially secure. Where is something that can kind of check those 2 boxes? But it wasn't out of purpose. It wasn't out of passion. It wasn't out of, I feel called to handle insurance in any capacity. And so for the last 5 years, where we have been super focused on my career and you have been in your semi-coasting phase of insurance, talk to us about why you finally, like, what did it look like when you finally decided to sell? Why did you sell? Did you sell right when you had decided, or was it this long tail thing? Like, what was the turning point of being like, okay, this, especially for this year, like, why did you decide finally to pull the plug on insurance and sell your book of business?
Even up to before I split off with my business partner, we had already been discussing selling, right? We'd had some pretty quick success in Airbnb. Mm-hmm. That was really starting
after 2020.
After 2020, of course, yeah. Had to get through that one, which we did. And so we had already kind of started discussing that, just because the people above me in insurance were also talking about it. I didn't even know it was an option until they started talking about it. And I was like, oh,
about selling their book.
About selling their book and kind of how much, how it all works. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so we, just like me in the insurance business, I'm an excellent salesman. I was at the time a terrible business owner. I didn't know how to do admin. Now I know how to do customer service. But just like in Airbnb, you and me did it all. And a lot of times when you were moving forward on the next property or the next project, I would take a lot of the things from you so you could continue moving forward. So I would do management, I would do guest communication, cleaner communication, all those things.
You were the safety net.
Yeah. And so I guess, which was a good thing at the time, because it really taught me taught me so much. I wasn't necessarily very good at customer service. I was an excellent salesman, but that's all I knew. Airbnb forced me to do customer service and really become a master at that. And so once you continued to move forward, and I was really falling in love with what I was doing, I noticed that I just didn't like a client calling me, and I'm sorry for any client that might listen to this, but like a client calling me, I'm very good at doing one thing until it's done. You throw something else at me, I'm just like, you just hit me from the side.
You're going to do the one thing really
I'm going to do the
well.
one thing. I'm like, I don't work. I can't do multiple tasks at once. So if I'm in the zone doing something and a client calls me and they call me and say, hey, Ethan, I need a new card. Like stopping me, I was running 100 miles an hour at that. And so stopping me and me going over to the insurance side and ordering a card, which only took 2 minutes, but it's never 2 minutes. It's the phone call. It's the how you doings. It's the get online. Got to reset the password on that. You know that. And so it would just completely derail me and take me out of my focus and my genius zone. And it just kept doing that and kept doing that. And so I wasn't necessarily interested in selling the business, but I had read Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time because I had been so maxed out. I eventually got to a point where I was maxed out between Airbnb and insurance. I was really not paying attention to the insurance business. Clients weren't happy, understandably. And so I read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and he said the very first thing you have to do is get an assistant. And that was like, oh, duh. However, so I hired an assistant, and she was a good friend of mine, is a good friend of mine. And what I learned through that experience was it's very, very difficult to train somebody when you're pouring from a complete empty cup. Like it was absolutely awful for me. I know it was awful for her. Love you, Lindsay. Sorry for what I put you through. But we eventually got it. It just took much longer than anticipated. And so then we got her up and running, and she could do eventually she could get about 90% of the stuff done. That was excellent. Therefore, I could focus on something else. But the longer that went on, even that 10% started bothering me because it was like still taking me off my focus. And then I was splitting my days. Half the day I'd work on real estate. The other day, half the day I'd work on insurance. And again, I just don't do two things well. Yeah. And so I just kept getting mad at the insurance side of things because it wasn't what I wanted to do, because it was paying the bills. Every month the check would come in. That was excellent. We lived on that. But so anyway, I just got to a point where I was like, every time Lindsay texts me or emails me, or every time a client texts me or emails me or calls me, I would just be mad.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, the story that I want you to tell is the turning point at Legends Ranch.
Yep, I was getting to that.
Because that really, you were in that phase that you're talking about right there for probably 2 years.
Yeah, a while. Too
of
long.
Just carrying it and being like, this is me pulling up my bootstraps and understanding that this is what we have to do to continue having the same income and the stability and the safety net that we have had for 8 years. So
yeah. And so eventually it was, I had gotten to a point, I think in 23, early 24, where I had gone all the way through the process of selling the book up until the day of closing, because I was going to sell to my former business partner. Mm-hmm. And on the day of closing, he said no. Mm-hmm. And that really...
We were so upset.
Yeah, that really took the wind out of my sails. I thought it was fair. Everything, I thought that was an excellent deal for both. And it fell apart right at the end. Yeah. And so then that's when I was like, okay, maybe I'll just hop back in, because I had a decision.
Maybe there's a reason why it didn't sell.
I had a decision to make. The decision was to sell or to double down and grow it and to completely get me out of the business. That was the decision that I had to make. And so that's like, okay, I tried selling. That didn't work. So maybe God's getting us going this way for a reason. Here we go. And I made it like 2 months, and I was like, no. God, if
Still
you're
hate it.
God, if you're telling me, like, sorry, I'm gonna go the other way.
I don't want to suffer in this way.
Yeah, no. And so fast forward, I let it go all of 2024. Yep. And I went through another annual enrollment period, which is the worst time because it's the busiest time.
Last 3 months of the year. It's also when all the holidays are happening.
Everybody's excited for the holidays. I hate it because I'm just so busy and wigged out. Plus, of course, Airbnb is the most busy because of the holidays, and it's the transition of the season, so there's always things to do. And so we're sitting at Legends Ranch in Baldwin in December, right after AEP. I was just complaining to you. I'm like, I'm done, no matter what.
This is the second year that we've attended this event.
Yeah. Second year we've attended this event. I was complaining to you. I was like, I have to get out. And you were like, you always say that now, but of course, come January, February, you're back in it. And I was like, no matter what. And you kind of rolled your eyes. And
yeah,
I guess
this is my fifth AEP hearing that you're going to sell.
And I guess I probably rolled my eyes too. So I'm sitting down at the bar at Legends Ranch, and there's a lady next to me, and I don't necessarily, well, I'll just tell the story. So she asked me how I was doing and what's going on. And so I kind of filled her in on my life and how upset and angry I seem to be all the time, and how unfulfilled and just not happy burned out, just didn't know what to do. And she said, I'll never forget this. This was just the pivotal moment. And she looked at me and she said, I don't think you remember, but last year, same time, same seat, you told me this exact same thing. And I was like, and she goes, and so what that's telling me is you haven't made a move. You haven't grown. You haven't done anything in the last year. You're here.
You've known.
And you've known. You knew last year, you knew the year before, and here you are again telling me this story. And she was like, I just encourage you to make a move. Mm-hmm. And also, come next year at this time, I don't want to hear the same story.
You're like, send me a bill for that therapy session.
Literally. I was like, okay, a random lady that just like changed my life forever. And so what I do, I was like, thank you, ma'am. I got up and I went to you. I'm like, done. I'm done. I have to get rid of it. We're driving home and I'm like, I cannot. I just got called out. I'm on fire right now. I'm like, let's go. I have to get rid of it. I'm sending an email tomorrow. It's Saturday. Don't care. Sending it. And I did.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's interesting about that experience is like, I was saying the same thing to you in a much gentler way, right? And there's this balance I feel like we play in our marriages or in people's marriages where it's like you want to push your significant other, you want to challenge them, but you also don't want to be responsible for on the other side if they're not happy or they regret that decision or if they're going to have resentment if it turns out not to be what they want or whatever else. Yeah. And so I feel like I was really towing that line because both you and I are two people who do not like being told what to do.
Right.
Like, do not push me further than I want to be pushed, right? Like, we push ourselves hard enough. And so I just think that was one of those, like, aha moments where she was perfect place, perfect time, perfect moment for you to receive that message from someone you did not want to be called out by that didn't have anything to lose by calling you out.
Right. Yeah, and if she would have told me that in March or something, I'd have been like, whatever, lady. Like, yeah. But it was just perfect. Yeah. So, yeah, sent the email and got her done.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question to that, because obviously you toyed with the idea of selling this for a half a decade. It is not an easy thing to let go. I do ultimately think it was the perfect time, right? Mm-hmm. Like now looking back, it's like hindsight's 2020, but you can see why it didn't work out the first time and why we needed that income through 2024 and how that kind of just all played out. But what was the most difficult part about walking away from something you spent a decade building?
There's probably several things. I mean, of course, the uncertainty, right? Yeah. I'm so good at insurance sales, and I don't care again if the world starts like caving in or we lose everything. I know how to sell insurance, and so that was like the most difficult thing is like going from being the best at something to now I'm starting over, and maybe I'm not the worst because I can bring these skills over, but I'm not the best anymore. Yeah. And so that was tough because I did feel for a time king of the world.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I was truly the best.
Yeah, you were in insurance. It was interesting walking around to these conferences and events with you. And it was the same thing that we experienced with me now in Airbnb and insurance, where it's like everyone knows you from YouTube or knows you from, a conference or knows you from stories through the grapevine or whatever the case may be. And everybody was like smitten with how impressive your growth was in Medicare sales.
Believe it or not, before you got big on social media, I had a social media following. And we were sitting in a restaurant one time in the middle of nowhere in Michigan. We just moved here, bought our first property in Bitely.
Yeah, we are in a town of 200.
200.
And you're from Texas.
Right, not even from there, and nobody. And I get a text message while sitting in that bar, and it's like, are you at this bar in Baldwin. And I was like, wow, I got noticed by somebody. And you were like, what the heck? And I was like, I don't know.
There's literally 3 people in this bar, and one of these
knows
3
me from
follows
YouTube.
you on social media. That's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah. I mean, I think it was a big scary jump, right? Like that, what you built in insurance, like before we had insurance, we were just paycheck to paycheck,
Right.
scrappy, used to being super, super poor. And then when you had your career kind of explode in insurance, we got very comfortable having a certain income that we knew was coming in every single month, month in, month out, whether we were traveling the full month or whether you were selling the full month or whatever the case may be. And so, I mean, it was not a small decision to sell that, right? And you do get to sell it, which is a perk, right? It's like you're not walking away from a 9 to 5 with absolutely no income. You are walking away with a chunk of cash to go figure out what you want to go do next. But when you're not growing in the same field anymore, when you're not just expanding on something that you've built for 10 years, like you really were certain that you wanted to collapse it completely and start over from scratch. How did you know it was time and not just a rough patch?
That lady.
Yeah.
I mean, between her, me just feeling angry all the time.
Well, and I feel like, I guess, from the perspective of like, I think you and I talk about all the time, like one of my goals in life and being a relatively ambitious wife is that my husband never has to suffer through a job for 30 years that he hates just to provide for his family, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that the vast majority of people do that. And so although you were sad or grumpy or, carrying stress that you didn't want to be carrying or weren't super passionate about your job, I would say that that's pretty normal for a vast majority of people. And so I guess I'm curious, like outside of just emotionally being done with it, how did you, like, what was your thought process around, did you have anxiety in replacing that income, or did you have anxiety that it was going to stress me out, or did you have anxiety, like, were there any, at what point did you feel comfortable outside of emotionally being ready to let it go financially to also know that you were ready to let it go?
I don't know if I'm 100% like okay right now, because sure, we get a chunk of money in the account, but of course you start making payments like you're normally used to and you start seeing that go down. So I don't even know if I'm currently 100% comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But however, I have the mindset that I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of failure. I'm not scared of really finances. We always talk about, we can go back to the van, arguably when we were the most happy. And so just knowing that you could lose it all and not caring about that just takes so much stress off. Like, we don't have kids. I understand people that when they have kids, like the pressure's on. I completely understand that. But as of right now, it's just, there's no necessarily any sort of stress for me. I just know that I'm going to get it figured out. I know that this allows me, at least getting rid of it allows me to focus on what I want to do next. I was never able to think about that because I was so tied up in everything else and trying to please people and hit sales goals and things like that. And so I never really had the opportunity to just sit down and go, what does Ethan want?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, I know a lot of people have the mindset that when you're transitioning into something new, whether it be starting a business for the first time or transitioning into a new business from an old business, that the safest, most stable way is to carry both for a while. Right. And wait until the new one replaces the income of the old one. And both of us are not of that mindset.
Right.
Like, both of us are very high risk, high reward. I need the capacity to do one thing excellent as opposed to trying to do 2 things half-assed. And so I'm with you there. I mean, I know that every single time that you thought about selling your insurance book of business, I'm like, sell it. Like, get rid of our safety net. Like, honestly, we're probably better for it without it.
Burn the ship.
Literally burn the ship. Like, we were super happy in a van, still living on paycheck to paycheck, and we don't have kids. And so I guess personally, I know that in the conversations between the two of us, it's like so high risk, high reward. It's like, we are in the window of opportunity in our lives where if we fall flat on our face 10 times, like, it's just us.
It's just us.
there's no one else that's really suffering because of it. And so if it means that we go back to living in a van, I just need 18 grand to buy another van.
That's right. That's
and we're
right.
back on the road.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question I have is, we kind of talked through, if there were any moments that you kind of second guess your decision, and I would say yes and no, to that. But what did your identity feel tied to in your previous business?
My identity was tied to being the best salesman.
Yeah.
I experienced success so quickly. Once I learned the system, and somebody just told it to me one day. A guy here in Michigan actually just told me what he was doing. And he was like, you can do a ride along or come with me. And I was like, don't need to. I got it.
Yeah.
That's all I needed. So I had a lot of identity in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's been an interesting thing to watch you transition from being the center of attention, the person who's getting recognized, the person who's getting all the respect, all the reward, all of the claps per se in insurance. And then Airbnb kicked off and your passion for insurance kind of faded out. And I remember having a conversation with Emily. I was a little nervous that that was not going to be a fun experience for you, where you and I were going to switch roles in that way. And that, there could be resentment, there could be envy, there could be your identity lost in it and you not knowing where you fall in it. And I got to say, none of that reigned true over the last 5 years. I feel like you enjoyed being in the back seat for a moment.
I think I felt maybe some of those things sometimes. Like how can you not, right? It's just an adjustment. It's not that I was like, oh, I'm angry or whatever. It was just like, oh, okay, this is different. People don't know who I am or don't know what I bring to the table or don't know my skill set or don't need me.
Yeah.
So that was an adjustment, but yeah, never resentment. Never, I was like, go for it.
Yeah. 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 It takes a confident man for sure. One thing before we kind of switch into what this transition over the last 6 months has looked like, one question I have for you is for somebody who is currently in insurance and they're considering selling their business or their book of business, what's one thing that people don't understand about that process? What's a piece of advice that you could give them?
I've got several pieces of advice for this. One, it's going to take longer than you expect.
Yeah.
And so if you're feeling that feeling of wanting to sell, then you need to get that process started. Don't wait as long as I did, because by the end of it, you're just sending emails what is taking so long? Hurry.
Let that direct deposit hit that bank account.
Hurry. It's awful because I signed the paperwork January of this year, and I just got part of the check, and we still have part of or more business to transfer over in mid-June.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of hiccups in there, and I don't think it normally takes that long. So anyway, just start earlier.
Yeah.
Another thing, and I hope one or two insurance agents hear this, because I had so many mentees, I had so many agents underneath me, I've trained so many people, and many of them are successful in the insurance business. Some failed out, but this is the most important thing that I learned throughout the process is there is a large difference between selling a book of business and selling a business. Yeah. When I was listening to those people back in 2020 talk about selling their business, they were selling a business.
They were selling an entire agency.
Right. And they were talking about selling for 8 to 10x. And so that's what I had in my mind when it came to me starting to sell my business. And what happened was I got that number and I was like, phew, that's much lower than I was expecting because I heard these guys. And so a book of business is worth significantly less than a business. And so, when I first sold, I was in Level Up Your Listing in Arizona. And I was telling a guy that I'd sold, and he's like, you should go into consulting for insurance companies. That's what typically, that's kind of what you do after you're done. And I was like, I don't know what I've got to give. He goes, you could just talk about selling, and you can get people prepared to sell and do it differently than you did. And that's when I started thinking, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Because that's what I learned was there's a big difference between a book and a business. And so I just encourage anybody that's thinking about selling, you're going to have to do one of two things, just like I did. Go ahead and sell the book, and you're going to get significantly less than you're thinking, or you need to build out the business.
You need to stop being the salesman CEO
Correct.
and be the CEO.
Yes. You need to build that business. You need to become the CEO. You need to get internal salespeople. You need to get a marketing strategy. You got to get admin. You got to build that business. And that's what's going to carry it to the 8 to 10X.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was interesting. I mean, we had talked a lot about this as you left an insurance agency and went off on your own, is that the trajectory for an insurance agent is all of the agents that are excelling at selling end up going off on their own. And they're anticipating like, okay, I know how to bring in income. I know how to bring in leads. Like I can just continue running this on my own. That's just taking away the resources that you had at that insurance agency and then being a solo salesman and labeling it as running your own business.
Yeah.
Couldn't be further from the truth, right? Nobody is building out marketing. Nobody's building out operations. Nobody has any admin. Nobody has this isn't a business. This is just a list of people that see you as their insurance agent. And you guys never really went past that stage. Like you did have some agents under you for a while, but really you and your business partner, or when you were solo, you were just excellent salesmen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's one more thing. That's a great point to hit on is that, the people that you recruit and train in the insurance business show signs of being really good salespeople.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing because you receive an override from every policy they sell, you receive an override. But what I and many more like me run into is there's only so many policies you can have under your book before you can't manage it anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody is talking about how to hire an assistant.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about how to hire out admin, how to structure a business and remove yourself from that so you can train others to do what you've done. Nobody goes that deep in the insurance business. And so that's what I did. And like I said, many others is I was the very best salesman. Well, on the other side of the hand on sales is customer service. And there's a lot of customer service needs in the insurance business because, again, nobody understands it. And so it's like, sure, I can no longer go run at the capacity that I'm used to running because I'm fielding all these phone calls.
Yeah, you can't sell more when you can't service it.
Right. And so I'm like, so I can tell an agent, like, look, you need to get a mentor who has built it out, right? If you want to stay in the insurance business, build it out, right? Get to a point where you're comfortable, right? You're not going to be making millions, right? But get to your point where you're like, okay, that is something I can live on. I can take my foot off the sales gas and I can sit there and build it out and train others to go out and do. And that takes a long time and there's a lot of risk because there's chargebacks and roll-ups and a lot of debt in the insurance business. So that's something that I would make sure people understand is just get to a spot. There's no point, in my opinion, getting to 600 or 800 clients by yourself. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense to me anymore. But if you could get to 300 and then, like I said, kind of scale back a little bit and then build the business, that is what I would recommend. Which if you've seen any of my YouTube videos, that's the exact opposite of what I used to say. Get to 1,000, get to 1,500 clients. That's all I was push on sales. And boy, did I not know.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's because you were playing to your strengths.
That's right.
So the last question here before we transition, and I feel like this is a really good follow-up question to kind of your train of thought that we've got here is what lessons from insurance are you carrying into this next chapter? Because I feel like I have watched you have a huge mindset shift over the last year and a half of just having kind of the space and the capacity to start reflecting on your experience with insurance and what you would do and what you wouldn't do going forward. So what do you feel like you're carrying into this next chapter?
Carrying all my 10 years of mistakes, because there were thousands of them. Mm-hmm. I'm carrying all my lessons learned, mistakes, whatever you want to call them. I'm carrying so much knowledge on how to not only sell somebody on something, but also now I know how to service that person correctly and to the best of my ability. I'm just so focused right now on whatever the next step for me is, whether it's more into B&Bs, whatever it may be. Right now, I am laser focused on taking care of the client.
Yeah.
And communicating well and making sure they understand. And so I am carrying that into the next thing, which I think everybody can agree, at least after COVID, it seems like everybody's lost their minds on customer service. Like nobody's willing to help and nobody knows the answer to anything. And it's going to take 7 to 10 business days to get a response. I hate that.
Yeah. There's a big entitlement issue.
Big entitlement, or I can't book online, or if I can book online, I have to like call somebody to make a payment. I'm not calling anybody.
Literally.
You're going to have to call me. I'm just going to not pay that until you call me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not doing that.
Yeah. We're far enough into having technology that you should be figuring out that process.
Right. So I'm very excited to bring that into the next.
Yes. Yeah. So obviously we made the decision in end of year, right, to sell your book of business. You started selling it in January. And we were I also have been feeling like I want to set a million things down that I'm carrying, right? So we're kind of both hitting this like brick wall at the same time of burnout, of chaos, of being like, okay, we have had 18 irons in the fire here for a long time. And so there was a little bit of panic on my end when you were like, okay, I am selling my book of business, because I'm like, okay, well, I have been running at 1,000,000 miles an hour for the last 5 years in this era of, my ultimate goal being able to retire you from insurance and allow you to go do something else. But also like, I can't continue carrying everything that I'm carrying while you're in this transition era. Like, I don't want the expectation. I don't know that I have the capacity to provide financially what we need to bridge this gap between where you're at and where we're going. And so in January, you and I sat down and I was like, okay, how are we going to bridge this gap? Right? Like, we are going to get a payout from you selling this insurance book of business, but in theory, that payout should go towards whatever we're doing next, right? We shouldn't necessarily be living on that income. And so is there a way that we can do something in the interim that has a timeline, that isn't going to be a long-term, this is something that we're building and we have to stay in for the next 5 years? Like, how do we get paid out today? How do we offer some sort of a service today that is going to essentially pay for our living expenses for the year? And so in January, you and I were like, okay, that's the goal. Like, we have watched podcasts and reels online of couples being like, how do we double our income in 30 days?
Right.
And that was kind of the thought process, right? It's like, how do we figure out how to secure what we need to live on in January for 2025? Like, is that possible?
Yeah.
Is that possible to make multiple 6 figures in the month of January so that we can just like be like, okay, that's taken care of. Let's focus the rest of the year on just getting our wheels turning towards what the next thing is.
Yeah. It's a wild thought.
It was a wild thought. But it just was one that I was like, we need to have clarity, right? We need to have not the additional stress financially on top of trying to figure out what business we want to run. What does that transition look like? What are we like? We need the space to not make a rush decision.
Right.
And we had that space when we were in the van and we were basically living on nothing, and the B&Bs were making us enough to like pay for, we just had 4 months of uninterrupted, what are we doing? Where are we going? Why are we doing this? And so I knew that we were entering into that chapter again of like, we need to like get situated so that we have the space to decide and not make a rush decision and be intentional about it. And so that's why in January, when I had pitched like, hey, why don't you come and project manage a couple of projects for me? Let's, historically we have partnered on B&B projects where we will keep part of the equity, where we're holding a much smaller role in it. Like last year, I just raised capital for all of the properties that we were working on in New York. And at the time, as you guys know, we've worked really closely with Maddie and Skylar for years at this point. And when I first met Maddie, she had a product that she had offered when we were working under a fund that was like, what she called it was an Airbnb in a box. And essentially it was just a turnkey B&B solution where you wouldn't keep any of the equity. It would be theirs outright. You would just handle all of the finding, analyzing, designing, project management, operations, get it all up and running, and kind of hand it over with a pretty little bow on it. And after she had offered it, like I saw a few other influencers start offering it, like Michael Elefante started offering a turnkey B&B solution, so on and so forth. And so I was like, well, maybe that's what we do. in the interim. Like, let's just see if we can get a couple of projects that, have a hefty upfront fee. We don't keep any equity in, and we spend our time kind of doing that. It's not going to take up our full time, but it should. Like, if we can get 2 of those projects, that'll be enough for us to live on for the next year and not have to spend any of the money that you're making from this insurance payout. And so I had pitched it to you, and you were like, okay, like that's something that's going to take us 7 months, maybe 6 or 7 months, but we can secure it.
Boy, did we not know. Take it longer than that, which is great.
Well, really, it should take about 7 months because we should be done with the second one at the end of this month.
Yeah. Right.
But you had experience in project managing with all the projects that we had done for ourselves, right? Like, we hadn't done it for a client. But the bridge, I think, that was interesting for you that we can get into once I start asking you questions about this era is that you went from selling Medicare really well, obviously, but it was a free product, right? You're selling something that's free to people that they need.
Let's say, how difficult is that?
How difficult can it be?
Right.
So really, you're selling a pretty low risk, low reward situation over here, a free product to people in need, to now selling about the highest ticket offer you could possibly offer. You're asking people for multiple 6 figures of money, and to trust you with that. And so you went from having a ton of clients at a $0 sale to 1 client at multiple 6-figure sale. How have these 2 projects that we've done at the beginning of this year impacted your mindset in this era?
Well, it's similar. Like, when you're selling things, really the concerns are the same, right? The money behind it may be different, but the concerns are the same. If I make this switch on my insurance, or if I give you this money, are you going to take care of me? Are you going to be there when I need you? Are you going to be there to answer questions when I need you to answer any questions that I have? So really, that to me is all the same. It requires all the same things. It's just now I communicate with one person rather than 700. And it's just something that allows me to pour more into that one person because I have more time. I'm not stressed out. I'm not, maxed out on trying to please everybody. I'm trying to please one. So it just gives me that opportunity to really just take care of them the best I know how to. However, one thing I don't think I ever did in the Medicare space is I never asked for feedback. I never asked, like, what was good about what I've done and what was bad about it, right? Because especially towards the end, it'd probably be a lot more bad than good. But now it's something that I'm, like, encouraging to get. And that's what I'm asking the investors to give me, like, what was good about the experience? What was bad? Tell me what's good about the house or about the decisions that we made inside the house, like everything. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are worried that people are going to get upset. We've got some of the best people that we're working with currently. And
oh my God, we have a dream investor.
Couldn't have been any better of a person for kind of the transition we're in, because they've been so, not to say unplugged. They've just been, like, so trusting on what our decisions are and allowing us to make those decisions without having to go back and ask them. So I don't know. I just think that this has been an excellent opportunity. I love those 2, and I really look forward to doing more business.
Yeah. Well, and I think before I get into that, you have been incredible on the communication front. Like, that has been so much fun to work alongside you, because the communication for me, I feel like, because social media is such a big part of what I do, I get so exhausted by the communication so fast, because every single time I open my Instagram or open TikTok or open my email, there's 20 missed messages.
You're serving 700 people right now.
I'm serving 700 people. So there's 20 missed messages, and it's like, by the time I get through those messages and I get to the inbox and I'm reading an email that's going to require me to sit down and spend 30 minutes on replying, I'm like, that feels like the weight of the world, right? It feels like an impossible task. And I know that it's not, but it's just one of those things that just feels like an anchor on my day every single day. And so watching you have like I sold the deals, right? I raised the capital. I got the investor to say yes. So on that portion of the sales front, like I could handle that, but I could not handle the follow-up. I couldn't handle the service. And you came in really fired up about the service, which was amazing. But I think yesterday when we were kind of talking through what we wanted to talk about on this podcast, you were saying that like you felt like in the Medicare space when you were dealing with people who were like, oh, screw the government, or, you know, rich people are the worst, or like, you know, woe is me, that had impacted the way that you see the world, your mindset, your kind of aura. And when you're dealing with the exact opposite of that, when you're dealing with very wealthy people who are at a point in their lives where they are trying to invest in real estate to grow generational wealth for their kids, and how that has a more positive impact on your mindset. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So when you're dealing with seniors, I mean, you're talking typically about people at or towards the end of their lives, right? They've already had, they've done the thing, they've done their investments, they've done, they've made their decisions. And a lot of times they're, they've got a medical problem that's hindering them. I've seen everything. I've been inside every single house. I've seen every single condition. I've seen the people that have taken
pictures.
Yeah, I've seen people that have taken care of themselves. I've seen people that never took care of themselves. I see people that planned for retirement and didn't plan for retirement. And so the market that I served was lower income, I would say. Mm-hmm. And
like 40,000 and under.
Correct. And I just, when you're around people like that for as long as I was, and all the complaints that they have, whether it be the government or whether it be Medicare or whatever it may be, you really start to like think that way as well.
Yeah.
Like, oh, nobody has any money.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not even that you think that. It's maybe that you think that and say that to them to like relate to them more to get the sale, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I don't like that either. Interest rates are high or whatever.
Screw the government.
Right. Like whatever they're complaining about, I could complain about too. And so you just really get in this weird mindset where it's like,
it's like that sales guy that's like, you got to get on the piss train.
Yeah.
Like if your client's pissed off about something, you're on that same side of the seat, getting more pissed off about that same thing.
That's right. And it's brilliant. I love that guy. And so that's what happens. And so then you move over into this space where people aren't retired, right? They're still making investments. They're still figuring it out. They're still making decisions on their entire portfolio. And it's like to go from somebody that, probably has $3,000 in their bank account and they're scared.
Yeah.
Because one bad thing and they're toast, right? Mm-hmm. So going from somebody like that to somebody that can only sees opportunity and can hand over 7 figures of money without even blinking, it was a huge shift into reminding me that there is people out here with money, there is abundance, there is opportunity. And so that was a wonderful reminder that, because I don't even know if you really understand or realize when you're thinking that way. And while you're in it, you're just like, no, that's just the way it is. And, I'll just save to retirement and that's just what I'll do. You don't even think that that's how you're thinking. And then once you get out of it, you're like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, I've seen, and I've sent you this reel that Alex Ramosi has that goes around every, month or so that says, if you're going to be in business, you either need to sell to 1 million poor people or very few wealthy people. Don't get stuck in the middle. Right? Don't get stuck in the middle of this mediocre, middle of the road product. And I think that we were aware of that being the ideal situation, right? Choose one or the other. And now you've done both. And I feel like now that we have been exposed to both, the one thing that Alex wasn't talking about or didn't mention in that is the impact of the mindset of the people that you're selling to, that you're rubbing shoulders with every single day, that you're serving, that your business is tied to. It's like, okay, if I am going to be hyper aware of the way that other people's perceptions do inevitably impact me, whether I have my own opinion or not, it's like I just want to be surrounded by more people who have more abundance, can see opportunity, are not woe is me, are not in these really difficult situations. And like, I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong. It's just specifically for us, when it comes to our own mindset, I definitely prefer the few that have the abundance, opportunity. Let's make this happen. There's always a silver lining mindset.
1,000,000%. Yeah.
Yeah. What lessons did this project teach you about working with investors?
I was going to say, working with contractors is probably a better question. Oh, my goodness. What lesson did this, what?
What lesson did this project teach you about working with investors?
I think I've already mentioned that. Like, the concerns are the same.
Yeah.
I got an opportunity recently to sit on a investor call on another project that I'm really not a part of. And I got to, the investor was really a straight shooter, didn't hold anything back. I thought he was firm but fair, but he got to express all his concerns. He wasn't nervous to do that. And I was like, wow. It just solidified some of the things that I knew, but I also learned some things on like what they expect from us. And so even if the investor that we're working with currently never expressed any of these things, I know they're thinking it now.
Yeah.
And so now I can get in front of it.
Yeah.
So I've really learned, like, I'm trying to get into rooms that I'm probably shouldn't be in, and just get to listen to the concerns, and I get to implement those before they're given to me, which hopefully exceeds expectations from our investors, and impresses them, and it continues to, we continue to do business together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's been a big learning curve because we've been, for the last 5 years, focused on developing a skill set that allows us to dazzle guests in Airbnbs, right? So like from a hospitality perspective, how do we become the Marriott of Airbnb? And we have spent 100% of our time trying out different sheets, trying out different dishware, trying out different hot tubs, like literally every single thing that goes into a B&B we are playing with, we're testing, we're experimenting, we're learning what we like and we don't like. But now stepping into the last 2-ish years of working with investors, I wasn't putting enough weight on how do we also dazzle the investor, right? Because I'm so focused on dazzling the guest, and dazzling the investor is something totally different. It's a whole different process than dazzling the guest. And both need to be done if you're going to offer a product to investors, and have it be something that they want to continue moving forward. And the reality is it's like in a perfect case scenario when we're dealing with people who are handing us 7 figures a year to play with in these B&Bs, like it is a luxury investment, right? It is, I said this on Instagram the other day, but I feel like it's the Hermes bag of investing, right? It's like something that you get to experience. It's something that's sexy. It's something that you could take clients to. It's something that doesn't necessarily have to be your highest returning investment, but it is a showpiece, right? It is the show pony of your portfolio. And so how do we make that experience better for the investor? And I think that your outside perspective really helped because it's like, okay, well, these investors are coming to me because they see what we're doing on Instagram. It builds trust. They know that we're real people. They know that they've watched us develop this skill set, but that doesn't translate into their experience with us being flawless, right?
Yeah.
And I am like one that I want less communication as opposed to more communication with the people that work with me. Like I just am like, let me handle it. I don't need to be told what to do, all of these things. But with having you kind of step in here, it's like, how do we dazzle those investors? And I think the biggest lesson that we've learned this year is really dazzling them requires you to create a safe space for them to feel confident in offering that feedback loop. And like we had a conversation last night with our investor on the project that we just finished. And she was like, you said that you wanted me to be open with you. I'm going to go through a list of things that I would want differently on the next one. And it was probably under 10 things that she would want differently, all incredibly doable things, all things that I would love to do because they cost a little bit more money and they're a little bit more bougie. I'm like, say less. Like I can make anything happen for a little bit more money.
That's right.
But I texted her afterward and I was like, thank you so much for being honest with us and giving us the opportunity to know exactly how to improve these going forward and continue to try and impress you. And she was like, well, thank you for saying that because a lot of time people will ask for feedback but not actually want it.
Yeah. And I also asked for feedback like a month ago.
Yeah.
And so, it takes time for people to feel comfortable to give you that,
Yeah.
And so it's, like I said, when I hopped on that call and I heard that, and I was like, oh boy, because I'm certain that I'm dropping the ball somewhere. I'm not perfect. And so that's when I immediately that night reached out to the investor and was like, hey, any and all things are on the table.
Give it to me.
Give it to me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I may sulk for a little bit, but like we're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And that's gonna help me grow. So give it to me. And it took her about a month, but she did.
Yeah.
And I was like, fantastic. And I said, the good news is the first one that we've done together is gonna be the worst.
Of course.
Because we're just gonna continue getting better.
Yeah.
We're gonna learn each other. We're gonna learn styles, and we're gonna figure it out. So by the end of this all, it's gonna be
these are gonna be
nice.
tailored to your preferences
That's right.
while still having our expertise mixed
right.
into it. On this project, obviously, it was the biggest renovation we've ever done. Huge renovation. It was a burr before it was a short-term rental, right? Like we really did flip that property. And so we had taken on a bigger renovation scope than we had ever taken on before. Thanks, clients, for trusting us. But when we were going through that process, obviously a lot changed, right? We started with one scope of work, and then as we got our hands into it and as we understood the numbers more and as we understood the market more, then it changed into another thing. And so there was a lot of iteration of like, how is this going to look in the end? What design or build decision do you think made the biggest impact on the end result of this project?
I think the gym that we've put in, I think the reason I think the gym and the wellness space is a trend currently, but I think it's going to change from a trend to a lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I love building out these things for not only us, but people like us and the people that we want staying in these properties.
Yeah.
I think that's so much fun because if it were us and our group of friends, I would be so excited to go stay at a place like that.
Yeah.
And just see how much was put into that. And I love the gym. It was something I visually, when you drew it all out, I couldn't see, I didn't get. Of course, we had to make a few changes along the way, some big ones, some expensive ones.
Guilty.
It just totally transformed that house, and it looks absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Well, and I think one thing about this project that I guess made me a little anxious or makes me anxious in working with investors is presenting something that maybe isn't their exact cup of tea, but we know is a trend in the space that will drive income, right? And so like, for example, when we first started working with these investors and we went to Florida to see them, to see their new property, to kind of talk through some of the decisions that we had made in these B&Bs, the husband of the couple was like, I feel like cold plunges are, just the next woo-woo thing that like is going to come and go. And he's really into pinball specifically. And so I kept the design really close to my chest, right? I was not overly communicative about what was going in that property. I wanted as long of a leash as possible to make those decisions and to just really kind of push the investor on like, do you trust me? And I don't want to get into the nuances of what color the sheets should be and do you like this bed frame? And like, it just slows the whole process down. And so like, do you trust us to make X amount of money and the end product, whether you love it or you hate it, will it make the money? Right. And we pushed that last year too with Robert and all the properties that Maddie's designing in New York. Like Robert is a major investor on several of those properties and he's like all things flannel, taxidermy, and dude through and through. And Maddie's designs are very floral, very like cottagey, very like polar opposite of his design taste. And so like same thing for him. It's like we didn't tell him what they were going to look like in the end. And now when we send him a check once a quarter for the income those are bringing in, he's like, man, I don't like the way they look, but they sure do produce some income, like, and that's kind of the line that I want to try and avoid crossing, is having the investor be overly involved in the end product because we know what works. Right. And it is an investment at the end of the day, even if they are going to be using it. But I was really pleasantly surprised. I think that one thing that worked, and if our investors are listening to this, you guys will have to confirm or deny if this was the case with you guys. But I think that the wellness trend, the sauna, hot tub, cold plunge, gym situation that we are seeing kind of come on a rise. It's like a millennial and Gen X, Gen Z, whichever one's below us, thing, right? It's not a boomer thing. Like my parents are like, no, why would you be excited
I would
about
never get in a cold plunge.
Yeah, like if I'm going to a resort, I'm not excited about the spa. I'm not excited about the cold plunge. Whereas you and I were like, let's find the most aesthetic sauna cold plunge situation we can possibly find when we travel. And so I think that they didn't really get that at first. Like
when we mentioned we got a cold plunge in there, they're like, cool. I was like, oh, that was like $8,000 of the budget. So I hope you're a little more excited than that.
Yeah, they were like, whatever, like who's going to use it? But they have a daughter who's my age, who's very into fitness, wellness, the whole 9 yards. And so I feel like that really helped the scenario, like that she thought it was super cool. She was really impressed by it. And I know that like with the relationship with me and my mom, if I think something's super cool, my mom's easily hopping on the trend, right? Yeah. She's like, if Sarah thinks it's cool, it's cool. And so I feel like that really played a role in them being okay with it and not like pushing for an arcade, right? Because he loves pinball and like, you know, we've seen the game room, the garage conversion to a game room done 100 times over. Like that is the most popular conversion for garages in the B&B space. And so it makes sense even like his argument is a strong argument of like, let's turn this into an arcade. And I'm like, no, let's do something different, right? Like let's do something that's hopping on a current travel trend. And then they come to the property, they enjoy it for the first weekend, and the message that we get immediately upon leaving is the husband's like, I'm buying a cold plunge. Yeah. He's like, send me the link. This was incredible.
Yeah. Before they showed up, we had lunch with them when they flew into Michigan. And he was like, I'm going to do 5 to 10 minutes in this cold plunge. And I was like, okay, like, good luck, right? Because he's never done it. I was like, have you done it? He's like, no, I've never done it. And I was like, cool. Well,
no, he said 3 to 5 minutes.
Oh, 3 to 5. Okay. Yeah, a long time, right? And I said, well, maybe just start with 3 and it's okay if you do less than that. And he's like, okay. And we get a text message that night. I did 1 minute. That's impossible. That feels like torture, right? What on earth, you know? And I was like, oh no, you know, it's like, it's when you hop out, when you're in it and when you hop out. Hold on. Right before you get in.
The mental battle.
Then when you get in and then when you hop out, sucks.
Yeah.
Like those are the worst times right there. But if you once you dry off and stop shaking, that right there is the high you're chasing. And so
that's that dopamine rush we all want.
Once I told him that, he was hooked.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes. He was like, this is it.
Let's
so
go.
I love to see that. I love to see that my parents hopping on the wellness trend. I love it in general. And I just think that you and I are more passionate about it, you know? So when it comes to like the end product that we're offering, the more passionate the project manager, designer, curation team is about the clientele that they're trying to serve in this B&B, the better the B&B turns out. And so I just am really excited that we got the opportunity to kind of create the space that we would want as travelers and that it was received well by the clients as well. How did we divide roles and what did you learn about your strengths versus mine in these two projects where we were working side by side?
The good news is in the last 5 years, we've done many projects together, not in this size, but we've got a pretty good understanding of who's going to do what.
Yeah.
What I really struggled with, so I'm really good at communicating with the client.
Yeah.
But what I've learned that I'm not good at is communicating with contractors because you can envision it in your head. You could even draw it. And they don't see that. Mm-hmm. And so I've really learned that I've got to improve there. I've got to make double sure that they know exactly what it is I'm talking about. And I want also while sending photos along the way, don't finish the job and then send me a photo. Do 10%. Say, are we on the right track? Yes. Do another 10%, you know?
Yeah. Until you build up a trust with a contractor.
Correct. Yeah. And so I found that was one of my weaknesses and opportunities to grow and learn. As far as you and me goes, the one thing that Jonathan helped me with recently is, I think you were somewhere, you weren't there. And I was like, man, I really need Sarah to answer a question on something. And he goes, send her an email. And I was like, I never even thought about that. Why? She's usually right next to me. Why don't I just interrupt what she's doing, stop everything that she's doing, and answer my question, you know? And so we really, again, we're learning every single day, but that really was like, oh, like, okay, that's one thing I've learned with contractors. Is this a right now issue, or is this something that we're working towards in the next couple of days? Which means, do you need that answer right now, or is that something I can get with you on in a few days?
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, oh, I just need to, at the end of the day, yes, it's convenient having my wife/business partner 3 foot away from me, but you're also currently in your genius zone, or you're working on something else that has nothing to do with this. And me throwing that question in there derails you, right? And just for something that didn't need a decision for a few days.
Yeah, something that wasn't that serious.
But no, right. And so it's like now I think that more importantly than roles, it's like how to handle communication when during the day, at night, because the other day we woke up, we went outside to go get coffee, and you immediately start talking business.
8:30 a.m.
Yeah, 8:30, and I don't know if I didn't sleep very well that night, but you just, going off on things, and I said, Sarah, I don't think we have to make that decision right now.
Yeah.
So let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's give ourselves some husband and wife time versus business partner time.
Yeah.
And so I just don't necessarily think that I think we've got the roles figured out. I just think that we need to work on communication and making sure that we're not interrupting each other and taking them out of whatever it is that they're working on.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Emily and I have kind of talked at length on a couple of these podcasts this year about how, we have decided to put down the retreats and we've decided to put down the mentorship, and we're going to continue running this podcast, but I'm setting down a vast majority of what I do outside of these investor projects because I want to work with you, right? Like you and I have been entrepreneurs kind of in our own arenas for the last decade, and I have been very involved in insurance. You have been very involved in Airbnb. Like we have kind of built several businesses together and carried different amounts of those businesses on. But we are entering into an era where we're very clear that what we build next is the only thing that we're building, and we're building it together, period, end of story. Like I think that you and I kind of flirted with the idea of working alongside each other and knowing that, it helped that both of us were entrepreneurial, but do we actually want to be both entrepreneurial and both in the same business at the same time? And I don't think that answer was clear until this year, where both of us were like I could feel that you were really pursuing my attention and wanting more of it and wanting me to not be so spread thin. And I'm watching you set down insurance, and I am just like salivating at the idea of being like, let's go all in on something. Like we have learned so much over the last decade. Like let's scrap it all and kind of start fresh and see what it looks like when we get to start from the ground zero with the amount of knowledge that we have now. And so it has been kind of a transition in this season, in this last 6 months, of me taking my foot off the gas pedal and just being like, let him lead. Like I have led for the last 5 years in the real estate space, in Airbnb, and you have been the supporter in that in every way, shape, and form, just catching everything that I can't catch. And so now to kind of put my foot off the gas and let you lead and be like, I want to be on this train. Like, I don't want to lead this anymore. Like, I really want to take my foot off the gas and be kind of a supporting role in this. I'm excited to see how we figure out how to balance that, because that's all we talk about is business, right?
Yes. Even right when we wake up.
Yeah, and we love it. And so I just think it'll be a really fun experiment for us, a really fun chapter for us to just kind of put all of our chips in one bucket together. So
That's right.
We'll see how that looks. I've got two more questions for you, and then we'll wrap up. How has the last 5 years of heavily focusing on real estate investing shifted your mindset around money and investing? Because we've obviously talked about, residual income being introduced in insurance, real estate investing being introduced when we stepped into Airbnb. And now we're in this transition of saying, hey, we're going to kind of set everything down and move forward on one thing that's different than both of those things. What is our mindset now going towards not being certain of what we're going to move forward on, but knowing that it has to look different than real estate and insurance?
Here's a controversial take. I think passive income is a scam.
Yeah, I think that's not necessarily controversial.
Well, it's something that I've recently discovered. That was the goal in the beginning of this podcast we talked about when he flipped that chart around and showed me renewals. I just think that sure, it does allow you some flexibility and freedom. However, I think that it also makes you lazy and takes away from right now is our prime like hustle years, and 20s and 30s, you're just like figuring it all out. And once you figure something out, you've got the energy and the time to just go get it. And so my goal, it's hard to get motivated when you've got when you look at the account, there's $100,000 in there or whatever, however much, it's hard to go like, I need to go get this.
Yeah.
And that's what was so valuable in the insurance business. I was always so broke. And if I wasn't broke, I would transfer the money out of that account and I'd look at it every day and go,
I need to go to work. Yeah.
Time to go to work. And until a day comes when you have enough money and you're like, okay, I don't have to go to work, or I can go party tonight, or I can stay out all night, or I can do these things. And I just
half day every day.
Yeah. And I'm at a point right now where I feel like I got to do so much at one time, and then I like basically set it down, and then I just coasted. And so for many, many years. And I'm like, now I'm at a point where I'm just like, now I've got so much more than I ever had when I built it the first time. More knowledge, more experience, more contacts. And I don't necessarily have to worry about the financial side right now. And so, because once you get the financial stress off of you, you're able to really think a little bit more clear. So I think that, again, I think passive income is just something that I'm not that interested in right now.
Yeah.
And I'm more interested in getting our active income back up. And I just think that to do that obviously requires you to get in, get something going. And then ultimately, of course, you want to take that active and roll it into some passive. But I just am not of the mindset right now that passive is important. I know you keep saying, we can't sell all the houses. We got to have some money. And I'm like,
sell them all.
Sell them all. I'm just not in the business of doing that, because I know that right now I've got the energy, I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge to just take that little bit of money and just bet it all on black and go.
Yeah.
And I think our active income, we can get that to a point that we've never even dreamt of, and could then roll that into some more passive income.
Yeah. Yeah. We have had a couple of people put us in check on investing in real estate over the last 6 months that have been really, really valuable. One of which being our CPA, Steven.
It's been very valuable this year for me.
Very valuable. Granted, probably people listening to this have heard me talk about my experience with Steven. He costs over $1,000 a month to work with. And we just thought we couldn't afford him, literally ever. Like I'm used to paying a CPA $1,000 a year to file my taxes. Like, you want that per month. You want it 12x what I'm paying my CPA. But he is a tax advisor, right? So he sits with us once a quarter. He'll look at how much money we're bringing in. He'll tell us what we need to spend on investments to lower our tax liability, all of this stuff. And the reason we decided to switch to him, because our CPA sent us the CPA that cost $1,000 a year. He sent us a tax bill that was $67,000. I wanted to throw up. And I took it to Steven, and Steven took it from $67,000 a year to $30,000. And I was like, okay, you paid for yourself for the next 3 years. You earned my business. And that has completely shifted our mindset in so many ways, because earlier this year we went to Idaho. We hung out with him for a day. And when we were in Idaho, we had the conversation with him where we were like, look, you get to sit with and look at the finances of hundreds of people, hundreds of wealthy people, right? We're probably bottom of the totem pole on earners. And we do better than anyone we know, but still, like, you're probably dealing with people who are earning millions a year. Like, what are we doing wrong? Like, you know what we're doing. You know what the people who are successful are doing. Like, what are we doing wrong? And he was like, you need the cash flowing business first. Like, you have figured out how to invest, and you would be a really great partner for those who have already figured out the cash flow thing with another business, and now they're looking to, transfer it into B&Bs, but you're never going to make the kind of money that they're making by investing your money in real estate right now. Like, if I were you, I would take a step back and go find a very high cash flowing business that doesn't have the same tax benefits, doesn't have the same equity increase that the real estate does, and just go get something that's cranking cash. And the reality is like, now that we have had him and a few other people have that conversation with us over the last 6 months, it's like, well, duh, we're spending $150,000 on this new Airbnb property between down payment, closing costs, and renovations to earn us $50,000 to $65,000 a year in cash flow. So I'm spending $150,000 to make 50 to 60. Whereas when we're looking at buying these businesses, or we're looking at these boring businesses, these service-based businesses, whether it's hot tubs, HVAC, what's the one that you looked at the other day? An accounting firm.
Commercial cleaning.
Like all of them, it's like if we were to spend $150,000 on that, you're immediately year one making $500,000. And so all of a sudden we're like looking at the numbers and we're like, wait a minute. Like we figured out something that immediately replaced my 9-to-5 income and does have a good return when you're talking investing. Like if you're looking at stock market, you're looking at real estate investing, commercial investing, whatever it is, like the returns on Airbnbs are sexy. They are fantastic. It is a good investment. But are we at the point where we should be investing that amount of money in that right now? Or do we really need to be focusing our time on building something that has a ton of cash flow? And I think that's the biggest mindset shift that we've had in the last 6 months of being like, wait a minute.
100%. We're currently in the middle of a 1031.
Yeah.
And we're on day like 21 or something of the 45. And we haven't even identified a property.
Yeah, whatever. We'll do that this week.
And I know we sit there and talk about we're going to do that this week. We said that last week.
I have to buy a property this week.
I know. And it's just, I think that I've recently invested, and I know we're out of time, so I'll wrap this up. But I've recently invested in a coach that buys boring businesses. Not Cody Sanchez. That's somebody else. But and I have been in 2 classes so far, and I'm like, got it. And I have this weird complex that I know a lot of entrepreneurs have, where if you see somebody doing it, you're like, I'm better than you. I can do it better than you. I can do that. And that's what these 2 classes have been, is basically they take, one of them was they talked about a guy that just purchased a business, and he was like, I don't know. I was just like, oh my gosh, dude, I just feel like
so average.
Just
Joe.
average. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just like,
you just don't have to be excellent to do it.
I feel like I could run circles around this cat, you know? But that's all it takes, is it just takes somebody to actually go do it. And then another one was that they were reviewing a business that was currently for sale. So I say all that to say that, like, yes, we're in this 1031 and it's important that we get this house. But I think because of what we've learned this year, and because I'm taking this class, I'm having a hard time getting fired up to go buy a house and spend $150,000 to $200,000 to make 50.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what if we don't 1031 it?
Then we pay, I don't know, $75,000 in taxes. I guess I would have to know that math. Like, what am I paying in taxes versus paying the property?
So that's where I'm struggling right now. Is I see the value. I love Airbnb. It's taught us so many things. It makes so much sense, but it is an investment. It's not something we should be really leaning on for income. It's I just feel like it's something you do after you've made your money.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. That's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the order that we did it in was appropriate at that point in time, because it replaced my 9-to-5 income. So I think for a lot of people, having one Airbnb allows them to replace their 9-to-5 income, and then allows them the space, the capacity, the brain space to go think of, okay, my 9-to-5 wasn't working. This works to a certain degree. Now, what am I passionate about? Is it rolling out more Airbnbs? Is it another business? Do I have another gift or talent that I want to pursue? And so I feel like that's just the point that we're hitting, where now we've got the capacity to think about it, and we've been exposed to really wealthy people who are having us bring these B&Bs to life, and we're saying, okay, wait a minute. They didn't get their wealth by investing in B&Bs starting at 25 years old, right? They got their wealth by picking one business that they were uniquely talented at, that didn't have the tax benefits or the equity or whatever that Airbnbs do, but they cash flow way higher. And then they're rolling that money into Airbnbs. And so we know what to do with the cash once we get it. It's just, let's figure out what we want that cash flowing thing to be.
One more controversial thing. I thought about this the other day. It was just, I was in my thoughts. I was writing some stuff down, and it was like, okay, we have to do this 1031. Otherwise, we have a tax problem. And it's just like, and I started thinking about this, and you may not agree, but I'm like, I don't think we have a tax problem. I think we have a cash flow problem, because we don't have enough of it.
Yeah.
Like if we had more cash flow, like we could pay the tax, right?
Yeah.
And so I just think that a lot of people get so obsessed with just the
Avoiding
tax write-off, the
taxes.
tax write. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like I'm not anti-tax. Of course, I'm not
Right.
pro paying for ridiculous things, but I'm just like, all right, like I want a tax problem.
Yeah.
I want to make so much money that I have to pay a big tax bill. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Trying to avoid $20,000 tax bill is not a problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. It's just we're doing it in the wrong order.
yeah,
Like it's good, but it's not great yet.
correct.
And we're never going to reach the level of wealth that we want without having our operations spread super thin. Because every property is unique. Every property has its own operations, its own cleaning team, its own everything. It's like it's a really difficult business model to scale.
Right.
And to make crazy cash flow. And I know that you and I are of the mindset that like, okay, we've got brains and we've got ambition. Like there's no reason why we shouldn't be making $1 gazillion a year. Let's just go figure out how.
And I think a lot of people are also trying to they're discovering this, right? And so they're moving into commercial boutique motels or whatever. I think the problem there is you're always broke in real estate.
Yes, you're cash heavy to immediately be followed by being cash poor.
Always broke.
Yes.
I don't like saving up $150,000 and then spending it and doing that. Like it's like,
yeah, I don't get to spend any of my money
right.
other than on another down payment, another sofa, another hot tub.
How many times have we saved up $150,000? Boom, $150,000. Boom, and it's
literally
just
5 times over.
right. And so I'm just like, and sure, now commercial, of course, you can maximize that money, yada yada. But all you're doing is just taking more money
Literally.
to roll into the next
How
bigger
do I
thing.
have multiple 6 figures sitting in a bank account and I still feel broke?
Right. And so I just like, I love real estate. I love everything about it. I love everything it's taught us. I just am like, we're doing it wrong. We're doing it backwards.
Yes.
We've learned.
We need to come back to this in a decade.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's just, commercial doesn't excite me because it's just bigger numbers.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's the same concept. You're broke.
Yep.
Asset heavy, cash poor.
So that is us through and through. Got a lot of houses. They just cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, last question as we wrap up here. What advice would you give to another couple thinking about building wealth and trying to achieve financial freedom like we are?
I gave this advice to a buddy of mine in Nashville recently. I think in the age of social media, I think people are so obsessed with investing and returns.
Because it sounds sexy.
Because it sounds sexy. I've got Airbnbs, I've got this stock market portfolio, and et cetera, et cetera. However, when you start breaking it down, because I was a Medicare agent, but also a financial advisor, if you will.
Retirement specialist.
A retirement specialist. I got to see all the things. And so I learned the best thing you can do. A doctor can't write you a prescription or give you a diagnosis if he doesn't do what? Ask questions. You got to figure out what's going on, right? And then I can provide a diagnosis. I feel like I was a doctor. I have to ask 1 million questions to figure out what you're trying to accomplish in order to prescribe you the medication to fix this, right? And so when I was asking that guy some questions, I said, well, he was asking me about an IUL. Those went off on social media for a while. Some are good, some are bad. We have one. And I think they're important, an important piece of retirement. However, he was asking me about this, and I'm like, why? Why do you, I will sell you out of the product if I truly think it's a bad idea for you. I don't need the commission. I don't need the money. And so I will get you out of it. And so I was like, why are you doing this? Well, I saw it online. Okay, that's fine. That's great. That's where we all start. Why are you trying to accomplish this? Well, this is what what are you trying to accomplish by getting this? This. But the most important part, and I'll make sure to hit on this, is what debt do you have? And people are always like, oh, nobody likes to talk about their debt. Everybody's like, oh, this is weird, right?
It's a sensitive subject.
It is a sensitive subject. But it's very important to know this answer, because I truly believe that you should not be focused on investing and returns if you have debt.
Yeah.
And I mean bad debt. I don't mean your mortgage. I don't mean, well, really, that's the only thing I mean. But if you have student loans, if you have credit cards,
Yes.
and again, another highly controversial thing, because I know people that invest instead of paying that off, and I understand, but especially credit cards, if you're paying 25-30% interest and you're focused on investing
Don't.
and returns, stop that. It's not your turn. It's
Yeah.
okay. We didn't invest a single dollar into anything until
Student
we
loans
paid
were
your
gone.
student loans off and we paid all my credit cards off.
Which they were the same amount.
Yeah, had fun with that. And then literally the month we got all of that paid off, we made our first investment.
Yeah.
So I just encourage everybody, you're not behind.
Yeah.
It's okay if
You
you
will
are.
go so much faster if you focus on tackling one.
Get rid, like the Dave Ramsey snowball debt, like that thing really worked for us. That's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage you to focus on that debt first, get rid of it. And then the moment it's gone, you're already used to making that $1,000 payment or $2,000 or whatever that is. The moment that's gone, roll that into some sort of investment.
Yeah.
And so I told him, I will not write this policy for you because I don't think you can go find somebody else. I'll explain it all to you
Yeah.
and why they're important and why they can be beneficial for people, but I won't write it.
Yeah. You've got other debt to pay off first.
That's right. Get to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really worked for us. Like I so vividly remember bringing my W-2 tax paperwork into our place in Euless, and you had the same paperwork looking at what you had made in a year versus what I had made in that year. And I think I had made $31,000 that year, and you had made maybe $35,000 that year. And both of us just being like, whoa, we're making absolutely no money. And I have $20,000 in student loan debt and you have $25,000 in credit card debt. And what are we going to do? You know, and me having like the sticky note on my computer at work that had the amount of debt that I had on it. And every single 2 weeks, I would take the sticky note off, write a new number, put the sticky note on. And it just became this huge race for the two of us because both of us were seeing who could pay it off the fastest. It became a game. It, you know, brought in my coworkers and they were involved in that debt pay down process. But we kept doing that even after we had the debt paid off. Like we were like, okay, we're used to each dedicating $1,000 a month and just living on literally nothing to try and get this debt paid down. Let's continue that lifestyle even after the debt's paid off so that we can save this little nest egg of, you know, 20 grand or whatever it was at that point in time to invest in B&Bs. But I think that that's great advice because people do feel so behind and they feel like we have figured out, or people in the space, the real estate space have figured out this like get rich quick thing, which we fell for as well. It's like when you talked about insurance at the beginning, like you were told, hey, you know, you're going to hustle for 5 years and then you're going to be able to chill. And it is the same sentiment of this get rich quick and then chill. And the reality is, it's like what we have discovered is we really enjoy work and we enjoy building the things that we enjoy building. And the idea isn't to like be the first one to chill.
Yeah.
It's to be great and to dazzle people and to do something impressive and to impress ourselves. And so I feel like that mindset shift has happened through that process of paying off our debt and starting to understand how money flows to you when you have a larger purpose, a larger passion around what you're doing. So
Love it.
well, that's all the questions I have for you. And this was a long episode. I think we're literally at an hour and a half here where I thought we were going to be 45 minutes. But
Sorry, everybody.
but there was no doubt that we were going to take a long
We
time.
did warn the guy. We're both talkers.
We are both talkers.
I
But
said this is going to be a long one.
it deserved the story. It deserved the context. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate running alongside you in all of these ventures that we have. I think that you and I have something special in the fact that I think both of us very much understand where the other person is coming from and the desires that we have and the careers and the projects that we take on. But it's just been a joy, a pleasure, a privilege getting to watch you both succeed and fail over and over again and to be stepping into something new with you this round of a new chapter, a new era for us. So thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for coming on and talking about all the things. And we'll have you on again in the future, I'm sure.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.